Welcome to Hobbies with Robbie. Today we have Irma, and Irma
Hi.
is going to talk to us about her hobbies. How's it going?
Okay, it's going fantastic. I'm excited for a little day of show and tell.
Awesome. Well, so am
Yeah.
I.
Oh
So,
yeah.
Irma, we've known each other for quite a while, at least a couple of years.
It's been years, man. It's been like 3 years.
Been a little while, hasn't it? But we
Yeah,
do have a bit of history.
it's been before I started drag.
I think that's true. So
Yeah.
now today I'm guessing that this show is mostly about hobbies, and I'm
Yeah.
guessing that probably what we're going to talk about today is drag. That's kind of my feeling. What do you think?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think I'm feeling the same thing. I think I'll be having what she's having.
Okay, awesome. Well, I
Yeah.
think I'll have what she's having too. So hey, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? I usually like to get people to talk a bit about where they're coming from. I think all good superheroes have to have a or origin story. So
Oh
so
yeah.
give it to us.
There is oftentimes a comparison between like drag and superheroes. In fact, I think like there was even like some spin-off series of like a spin-off cartoon series of like the Trixie and Katya show, Trixie Mattel and Katya, where they like basically dress up as superheroes, and the narrative is they're superheroes kind of like the Powerpuff Girls, and they fight crime like the Powerpuff Girls. And I think that's fucking rad because drag queens are a great archetype for being superheroes. Oh,
There we go.
sorry, my signal cut out. My phone's really low on battery, but we'll just plug it in. But as for my backstory and my origin, like I come from pretty simple, humble beginnings. Like my family mostly French Canadian. Hence my last name, which is Dumont. Well, my boy name, like out of drag, is French. But I grew up in Hamilton, Ontario. It's a pretty nice town. I like it a lot. You know, I've complained about it sometimes, but it's my hometown, and I'm absolutely representing it. I'm really like a local resident in Hamilton. I was born at McMaster University Hospital, so like I'm really like local here. And yeah, I just want to like absolutely represent the thriving artistic scenes and communities and like cultures that Hamilton represents, because there's a lot of that in Hamilton. I know like in Austin, Texas, they have the saying, keep Austin weird. I think we should keep Hamilton weird because it has a lot of similar overlapping subcultures, countercultures that a lot of artists here like to associate with. And I think that's fucking rad because it's like having an alternate family almost, or it's like having a chosen family. And I think, you know, it obviously having a strong family bond is really important. And I have a really strong family bond with my family. I have lots of love from them, and that's really important. But also, in addition to that, like chosen family is important. Who you choose as your family. Like, there's a song by Rina Sawayama that I really like that's called "Chosen Family," and it touches on that topic. It says, I think the lyrics in that song are like, so what if we don't look the same? Like we've been going through the same pain, or we've been sharing the same pain. And I think that's really like just the pinnacle of perfection when it comes to like what chosen family means. And yeah, like a lot of my chosen family is like part of the queer community and part of the arts communities in Hamilton. And that's what I just like kind of leaned towards and chose to associate with over the years. And I'm fucking proud of that, man. Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing. I was also born at McMaster,
Oh,
so that makes
sick.
two of us.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
No
I'm
fucking
not
way.
I'm not from Hamilton, but I was born at McMaster because of my mother having to have an emergency C-section.
Oh my gosh, no way.
I think that's the story. Maybe I'm wrong, but I know I was born a pastor.
That's crazy.
So what got you into drag?
Honestly, just like watching RuPaul's Drag Race as a kid. I know that sounds really generic and lame, but like honestly, the show did get me interested in drag. I loved the Rocky Horror Picture Show as a kid. I loved Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. I liked like all that shit, like Hedwig and the Angry Inch and stuff like that. So I was like really into that stuff. And yeah, like just like in general, I just like gravitated towards the drag scene because I thought it was kind of rebellious at the time. It was really punk rock, and it subverts notions of toxic masculinity, which I'm all for. Like, I'm all for subverting notions of masculinity that are like toxic and stuff like that. And I think drag is great for that.
Great. Well, I like
Yeah.
subversion of everything, and that's why I'm doing this show, because this
yeah.
show's whole idea is to show parts of people that they don't usually show in public. But one thing
For
that I know
sure.
about you is that you have been outstandingly, you know, forthcoming and open and brave,
Yeah.
and you show yourself a lot,
Oh,
especially on Instagram. If you want to
thank
give
you.
your Insta a shout out,
Yeah.
people can see you.
Okay, shameless plug time. No, I'm just kidding. My handle is Irma Vepp official. Name Irma Vepp comes from, it's an anagram for the word vampire. It's a titular main character in the 1915 Louis Boyard French silent film serial Les Vampires, which I fucking love. And the Oliver Assayas film with Maggie Chung, Irma Vepp, love that movie. Great movie. Such a great film. I would recommend anyone watch that. And yeah, I named myself after like her. And I just decided to just take that concept and just like run with it. See if I can go the whole 9 yards.
That's great. Now, I
Yeah.
have a question because I don't get to talk to people who do drag all the time, and I have
Right.
some questions about drag. One of the big questions I have is RuPaul really actually cool?
Fuck, I've actually never met her, so you know, I imagine she's, you know, a perfectly decent human being, but at the end of the day, she is a human being after all. I've heard problematic things about RuPaul, but that's okay. Like, I have heard she's made in the past potentially remarks that could be interpreted as transphobic, um, saying possibly exclusionary things about trans women in drag. I've heard like stuff like how she compared a trans woman competing in a drag competition as being like athletes doping in the Olympics, which one could consider to be fairly transphobic or problematic for sure. But you know, I'd say for the most part, she's done a lot of work to support the trans community and probably redeem herself and acknowledge the fact that she's made mistakes in the past and try to move forward from them. And I think that's pretty cool. And you know, at the end of the day, I think that's like the best that we can all do is just try our best to correct ourselves when we make mistakes. And you know, if you try to say something and it comes out wrong, just, you know, try your best to have a positive outlook on that, and you know, channel your energy towards being constructive in the future and stuff, instead of like, you know, saying something that one might misinterpret or interpret as being like overtly negative or cynical to say, which some argue RuPaul like said things like that, but you know, like, so what? Like, I don't know.
Well, that I think also brings up another really interesting question, which is that one of the old stereotypes about the drag community was that people in the drag community were really like rawr. Is that still a thing, or has that ever been a thing? Because I'm looking at this from the outside, so educate me.
Like cattiness and like drama and stuff like that. You could say that's a prominent part of the drag community, you know, like not just necessarily someone who's in their bedroom doing drag, but the actual like culture and scene that's associated with the drag shows and the drag houses and the drag families and all that. There is a certain sense of cattiness and stuff. But you know, like a lot of it's, I would say like a lot of it's pretty performative. A lot of it's mainly just people playing a persona or character. It can get a little clicky sometimes, and I like to distance myself from that. Like to an extent, it can be entertaining or funny, but like, you know, I like to kind of just not project an image of myself that is in any way like shallow or consumerist or materialistic. And I'm like, I am a drag queen, but I'm not into necessarily embracing materialism, so to speak. I kind of consider myself like persona wise more immaterial, and in that sense, I like to avoid drama whenever I can and not get too caught up in or be too involved in it. So even if I see someone who I think is a fantastic drag queen or a drag icon or whatever, being a little catty or being or like you know, perpetuating gossip or drama, I'm like I'll still not really associate with that because I just think it's like not too like cool, so to speak. I don't know. That's just like my take on it. So like, yeah.
Right on. Well, that's what we're here for.
Right
So
on.
but you know, it's really interesting because you mentioned also that you're not very materialistic, and I know that to be a fact because you sewed the dress that you were wearing right now.
Yeah. Like I don't buy like really expensive brand name stuff. Like I'll spin it around. I'll show you the dress if
Show
you
us
want to
the
see it.
dress. Yeah. Woo.
Okay, I'll show off the dress. So I like sewed this myself.
Very nice. Wow.
It's not totally finished. There's like still a pin here, but it's a work in progress, that's for sure. I also ran short on the sequins that were supposed to go along here. I bought them from Fabricland or European Fabrics on Ottawa Street North. Um, Another plug for small business that I like to support and I like to help out financially and stuff like that. But yeah, like I like to make all my own stuff, but in a way that's not like crafty, you know, like from the perspective of like a fashion designer, I really like Coco Chanel or like Alexander McQueen. So I like to kind of emulate that style, that really high fashion style, but in a way that like, you know, is not too like brand name, you know what I mean?
So here's a question then. If you I like Coco Chanel too, but
Yeah.
what do you think of old school Vivienne Westwood?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I don't know too much about her, but I would probably fucking love her. If I saw the face, I'd probably recognize it. I do love old-fashioned Hollywood stars. I'm sorry, I wish I could say more about Vivienne Westwood, but I'll be brutally honest. I probably couldn't name like a movie or anything that she's been in.
It's
um,
all good. Vivienne Westwood was the
yeah.
designer who did the clothing for the old punk bands in the late 70s in England.
Oh, okay,
And
okay.
and so the reason why I mentioned that is because your dress has a little bit of it's a very, very subtle, but it's got a little bit of a punk aesthetic to it. Is that
Oh
do
yeah.
you think that's true a little bit?
I do. It's like it definitely brings to mind like kind of like those like crass like crust punk, like not necessarily, but just like the way things are stitched or sewn on in the dress. It's like that kind of like um as opposed to like glamorous like dresses on the red carpet. I definitely like try to incorporate elements of both, but it like if you look at the seams or the sewing or the hemming and stuff like that, you'll see all the like little imperfections that are kind of rough around the edges, a little jagged, a little like zigzaggy. And that's definitely something I own up to. And it's like totally a part of my style. It's definitely like, I don't want to say it's entirely intentional, but it's something that I embrace for sure.
Well, it certainly adds some personality.
Yeah,
So,
there's some character.
so you were mentioning that you have quite a collection of shoes and boots. Do you want to show us the ones that you're wearing right now?
Oh yeah. These ones are just from Amazon, but you get to see them. They're a little rough because I like wore them a lot. I wore them for, oh my gosh, you just saw like a little coochie flap. I'm like Sharon Stone from Basic Instinct now. But yeah, you get to see that. And yeah, those are the boots that I usually would have worn, like had I done like live shows and stuff like that. So fuck yeah.
Do you do live shows?
Unfortunately not anymore, not since COVID. Everything got canceled and I haven't really been able to find much in the way of live shows. I tried doing like digital shows, like live shows on Instagram, but it didn't really work out too much. It just was a little too like homemade, or I thought like looking back on it, it was a little like amateurish. So like I decided to just like take a break on that for now until like maybe I can elevate my drag a little more if I can do that. It's definitely something that I'm trying, but like obviously I have to juggle it on top of like a million other things, right? Like I have like a lot of work to do and stuff like that. And I don't make any money off drag, unfortunately. The biggest thing for me is it's really expensive. It costs like a lot of money. I usually have to drop a ton of money on it just to make it look even remotely good. But like I don't make any money back from it. So it's like not a fantastic investment. It's not something that I can make a paycheck or a living off of. So that means I have to juggle like another job on top of the drag, which usually gets in the way of the drag, so to speak. So I do have that concern, like, but like I would definitely love to do more shows. I think the last one I did was actually like the last like real one was Pride Hamilton 2020, and that was lots of fun. But again, it wasn't at any venue or event. It was all at home, and we had to live stream, and it was like a little awkward just figuring that out for me because like it wasn't something I was really used to, but like I felt like I adapted to it well, and I would definitely be down to try something like that again.
That's awesome. Well,
Thank
you know,
you.
I mean, COVID has been a very, very crazy time, and it's an
Yeah,
interesting reflection about how it has affected various different communities. Now,
yeah,
in terms of the drag community in Hamilton, where you're living, I'm guessing that it's a fairly healthy community, right? Like, there's
it
quite a lot
is.
of people, aren't there?
It is. It's healthy, and there's like a really wide representation of different people. That's for sure. And it's very open and accepting to like people of all types and skill levels. Like it's like it doesn't matter if you're not like really exceptionally perfect at drag. Like I'm not that great at drag. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say that as a drag queen because you're supposed to say, oh, I'm the best at everything, or oh, I'm the absolute best. Like I'm hot shit. But like I'm not like the most absolutely perfect at drag, but I get accepted and embraced by the community anyways, just because they love to see it and they love to just see people try it. They love to see people just try it on, even if it's not their expertise. They just love to see people try it out anyways. And that's what I'm all here for. Like,
Awesome. Well,
yeah,
so that's an interesting possibility that just came up in my mind. You know, one of the things that I have become really interested in since starting to do this show is that one of the things about talking to people about their passions is suddenly they reveal all of these possibilities. And it just occurred to me, within the drag scene, let's say that you had a hypothetical, like 45-year-old dad, and he wanted to try out drag once or twice just to see what it was like.
Yeah.
Is that something that would be seen in a positive or negative light in the scene?
I think, there would obviously be like a little bit of taking the piss and like stuff like that. But, they might take the Mickey out of you a little bit, but like it's all in good natured fun. Like it's good natured ribbing, so to speak. I think they would live for it. I think they would think it's so fucking cool and they would love it. That reminds me of the time Jordan Peterson did drag. Deb, have you seen that?
I have seen that.
I wish I could pull up that image right now and like show it to everyone because it's so fucking funny. But I don't have like a computer on me or anything. But it's hilarious. I would recommend anybody Google Jordan Peterson in drag because it's really funny. That just goes to show anyone can do it. Like hell, Robin Williams did Mrs. Doubtfire. So if he can do that, like anyone can do drag.
Now, is Robin Williams ever considered as an icon because of that? Or how does that work in the community?
Kind of. I think he is. You don't hear his name being referenced a lot. That's for sure. Like if we're talking about like name dropping or name references, you might hear a lot of like Anna Wintour or Linda Evangelista or like old school stuff like Greta Garbo, Rita Hayworth, Marlene Dietrich, all that stuff. But you never hear Robin Williams. And, I think, that's a shame because Robin Williams is a great example of how drag can be not just niche, it can be normalized. Like it can be totally normal and accepted by the public. If, I guess if just like presented a certain way to people, I think they would eat that shit up, like personally. Like,
yeah, well, and the other thing that's really interesting is that Robin Williams does drag as an older person, and so that also throws another element into it. Do you ever see any people who have drag personalities that go outside of well, heck, I don't know what the normal bounds of drag are, but do you ever see people with personalities where they add some extra flair to it that you say, whoa, wow, I wasn't expecting that?
Oh, yeah. Like totally. Like on the topic of Robin Williams, like you don't get to often see a cis straight man playing the role of a drag queen. And that's rare in and of itself because oftentimes people who do drag and are really public about it are like either super gay or not cis. They might be trans or non-binary or genderqueer or whatever the hell in between. But like Robin Williams is a great example of that because he's straight, he's cis, and yet he. Oh, sorry, hold on.
All good.
Yet he still does that, and I think that's really inspiring. That's phenomenal. As far as like really out there drag personas, hell, I don't know. I liked there's an indie artist named Eve's Tumor, who I really enjoy. And they do some interesting drag personas for their music and art and stuff. I also like the musician Arca, and they do lots of really out there, like far out, super interesting and thought provoking drag, and I'm all here for it. I love it.
Yeah. That's nifty. I have two questions, but I'll start with one that is still in a similar tangent. Do you know if there is a genre that currently exists of women doing something approximating drag where they dress as men?
Oh, fuck yeah. That's totally a thing. That would be called like drag kings. And I think Michelle Visage kind of teased the idea of doing a spin-off of Drag Race. So I'm just repositioning the camera here. but she teased the idea of like doing a thing where it was like a spin-off of Drag Race, but it would involve drag kings. Typically like cis woman, not cis woman, but like typically women, um, or like people who are like, let's say AFAB, assigned female at birth, um, taking the role of a drag king. And I think that's awesome. A lot of people will do androgynous drag where they're neither playing the role of like a man or a woman. And I think the like official name for that is like gender fuck. And I think a good example of that would be the drag artist Hungry. She does like drag makeup that's inspired by like Rorschach water art or like Rorschach water paintings. And I think that's really fantastic because it just goes to show that drag isn't necessarily an expression of gender identity or sexuality. It can actually just be an art form, just like theater, just like painting, just like music. For some, doing drag is just, it's the same thing as like playing an instrument or like painting on a canvas or doing dance or something like that. Like you had like Coco Chanel playing with gender by wearing tuxedos and men's suits and designing like tuxedos and blazers with cinched waists and stuff like that. You know, traditionally men's clothing, but cinched and tailored to the bodies of someone who is more feminine or, you know, traditionally cis woman. But like, that's just another example of how like drag can use androgyny as like an art form. And I think that's really cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Another question that I have is, you know, one of the things that kind of occurred to me about moving between gender roles, especially, is that
Yeah.
one of the traditional jobs of shaman in we can say certain traditional cultures is that the shaman is able to frequently move between genders and between sexes and is very, very fluid in that sense, and being able to move into different personality archetypes. And it feels like, in a sense, that in drag, there's a certain element of that. Do you have any thoughts about that relationship?
Okay. I've heard of like indigenous people who are two-spirited, and I think there are some indigenous two-spirited individuals who do drag. I on that topic, I guess I don't want to like say or comment too much on that without like sounding, I don't know, like culturally appropriative. But like, I don't know. I think there is a growing community of indigenous like two-spirited people who do drag. I think there was one on Drag Race Canada. Her name was Ilona Verley, and she was openly two-spirited and indigenous, and she did drag. I'm not sure if that like ties into like shamanism.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
It's very hard to say. I mean, you know, one of
Yeah.
the ways that I personally contextualize that is that as an archetypical figure, the shaman is simply a person who is able to exist in places where normal people can't exist.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, normal, you know, I'm not, you know, we have to be so careful when we use the term normal, because we can use it either in a falsely positive or a pejorative sense. And I'm not trying to use either of those
Right.
ways of naming. But what I mean is that you have certain people in every culture, really, who they're able to not only move between different groups in the culture, but they're also able to express themselves and understand the world in a way that's simply, you know, outside of the norm, and therefore are able to move within different identity categories, you know, in a unique way. And it feels like there's a strong element of that in drag.
Definitely there is. And I on the topic of like moving between different genders and different gender identities, I also agree, like drag validates that. It validates that a lot. and it gives a lot of credits and validity to that idea that gender and gender identity and biological sex are like different things, and gender, if not a social construct, at the very least is a fluid spectrum. It's a spectrum, and nobody's concretely fixed on that spectrum. You hear like people say science says there are two genders, man and woman, based on chromosomes or whatever. But like, I would argue that there are secondary sex characteristics that are neurological, that are hormonal, that are genetic. If not related to the chromosomes, they're at very least related to our genes and our genetic makeup. And if not that, at the very least, it could be neurological, or related to other aspects of human biology that are 100% valid. And there is scientific backing that gender identity is a social construct. Like I also, this is like way off topic, I'm like just diverging, but like there are like reasons to believe that like being non-binary or being genderqueer or something is actually like valid beyond just the gender binary of man and woman and stuff like that. And that gender binary needs to be like dismantled. It needs to be subverted somehow, because I think it causes all sorts of problems in society, personally.
Well, I'm a nihilist. And so being a nihilist, I have trouble identifying with anything. But having said that, I'm totally open to all of those concepts. One of the things that I find, particularly interesting, I had a really neat person on last week, Daniel Coffeen, who's a rhetorician. And one of the things he said is like, if you had to name your favorite color, why would you name your favorite color? Don't you like different colors at different times? How do you feel about that? Because sometimes you're Irma, and then other times you're Aaron.
Yeah. I, for one, I don't have like a different color. I like, or I don't have a favorite color. So like, I would say I define myself in the present. I define myself based on my present, not based on my past. That being said, I think the past informs the present, and who I was in the past shapes who I am today, and who I am today shapes who I will be tomorrow. So I think that, on the topic of like gender being a fluid spectrum, one day I might wake up and I think, oh, I'm going to be masculine today. I decided I'm going to be masculine. The next day I might wake up and I think, oh, I want to be feminine. I want to project an image of femininity. And in that sense, I'm non-binary in the sense that I have I would say or argue I have like a masculine feminine duality. I have a kind of like dichotomy of the two, if you will, so to speak. Some people might think that's so pretentious and conceited, but I think it's 100% valid. Like, there are days I legit wake up and I feel like a man, and then there are days where I wake up and I'm like, I'm gonna try rocking being a little womanly or something. And then there are days where I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm either, or I don't feel like either suits me or fits me on that day. So I feel like androgynous that day. And I find that very liberating. And I find that super liberating.
I'm a big fan of difference. And I think that on a day-to-day basis, across many, many metrics, I mean, gender is one of them, but there's many, many metrics where you will feel a certain way, and that goes into how you represent yourself within, the constraints of reality. Now, one of the things that you brought up, which is a very interesting direction in terms of the overall, not just the philosophy of drag, but life in general, is that you said the past informs who you are now, and the present informs who you will be in the future. There is a really neat book that, but I can't remember the name of it. I think it's called The Ever-Present, oh gosh, darn. Well, I'll put it in the links. Anyway, the gist of the book is that humanity has moved through different time phases of their understanding of the dimensions of reality. And so they started out in this very two-dimensional approach to reality. And it's seen in ancient art, right? Where ancient art is very, very two-dimensional. And the representations are very sort of like, it's not abstracted, it's just that they're not able to represent within three full dimensions. And so the argument of the author that as the Renaissance came around, then people started to be able to see actually in a three-dimensional spectrum. But now what we're moving into since the Romantic period and into the 19th and 20th centuries is, and now the 21st century, now the book was written in the 1950s, so you know, but anyway, the main point is that we're moving into a fourth dimensional era now, where we're able to also integrate time and go back to our beginnings and our middle time and now, and even link that into the future to be able to reveal something really inherent about humanity. And so I think that that thing that you just mentioned about, you know, the you of the past, the you of the present, and the you of the future, it really has a profound, you know, impact and a profound reality for all people to consider. I just wanted to bring that up because, you know, I think it's an interesting idea. And I think one of the things that you suggested is that as your preferences change, as your personality changes, even as your genes turn on and off relative to your experiences, you're going to continue going through changes. And I know that you mentioned it, but you know, if you have more to say about that, because you also know a lot, you know quite a bit about various areas of hard science. And so I bet you have all kinds of interesting stuff to say about that.
Oh my gosh, like how does like gender identity relate to science? That's like an interesting field of research, and that's a field of study that I think is worth exploring a lot more. It's not too much the field that I've been studying on the topic of like time, and time being something that's, let's say, metaphysical or something. You could argue, I guess, there's that mathematician who made that video imagining the 11 dimensions. And he mentioned how in the fourth dimension, there's like the fourth axis traversable plane, which is time. And time is a traversable plane. In the third dimension, you cannot traverse that plane. It can only be compressed or expanded, so to speak, or it can only contract or expand. Whereas in the fourth dimension, time would be a traversable axis or a plane that can be moved back and forth upon, just like depth is in the third dimension. You know, I would say that's a very like metaphysical, spiritual, almost like psychedelic concept. And I think the formation of our identity through memories that are informed by the past, which is time, is also a very metaphysical process. It's a process that's very metaphysical in nature, and that's what I meant when I said I don't embrace materialism or consumerism of any sort, and that the formation of my identity is very immaterial, or so to speak, metaphysical or spiritual. It is a spiritual process, and in a sense, philosophically, doing drag does kind of tie into that, because it's about the formation of one's identity, and it's about solidifying and cementing it, even if you know, you in your present self or you in your present self now are not ready to solidify or cement it. It's kind of making a statement where you say, I'm taking a leap of faith and cementing it and solidifying it anyways, even if I'm not 100% certain, like, or not 100% like ready to do that, because it's what's important, because it's beneficial to me, and it's about you know, being happy with my own identity and not wanting to hide it or not wanting to repress it, and projecting an image that says I'm fully happy and proud of my identity, you know, even if that identity fluctuates or changes over time. And that's who I am, and that's who I always will be. And you know, preserving that in time is also really important. Being able to preserve a record of that, not erasing that sense of yourself, not erasing that sense of identity out of fear or out of insecurity, you know, embracing it. And you know, on the topic of time, if you fluctuate in and out of that identity, but you don't preserve it in some way, or find some way to kind of trap it in the amber of time, in a way it gets erased. It disappears. And too many people in the past have done that. Too many people in the past have erased the identity that they really are. So, you know, when I do drag, it's about trapping that moment in amber and saying that's who I was at that exact moment, and I was really proud of that, you know? And yeah, like, fuck yeah.
That's great. Well, you
Yeah.
know, I have to mention that I skateboarded really avidly as a teenager, and I stopped around when I was 18. But around when I was 37, I started to skateboard again, and I was just bombing a hill on my skateboard the other day, and thinking about how freaking awesome it was. So for real about that whole like you know, time and trapping certain elements of your identity and not letting them get away from you. You know, if it's what you like, then more power to you.
Exactly. Like not letting that l'esprit d'escalier, the spirit of the escalator, escape from you or something, you know? That thing that you wanted to do, but you missed the moment to do it. You know what I mean? You can still have that moment back. Even if you think it's too late, it's not too late. You can always do it tomorrow. Even if there's pressure on you, you know, not to do a certain thing or to move in one direction and not another, you can still go back, and it's not too late, you know. And you can always do your childhood hobbies. If you did something when you were 14 and you feel like you're too old for it now, fuck yeah, you can go back and do that thing, because that's you and it's a fundamental part of you. And that extends to almost anything and pretty much any hobby, really, including skateboarding. Like that is a valid example of that. Like
yeah, well, and shredding a badass hill always feels
fuck yeah, buddy.
as long as you stay on the board.
Yeah, as long as you stay on the board, you know. As long as you don't wipe out. Yeah.
Right on. Well, I think that we'll gradually start to slow things down here, but is there anything that you wanted to say in particular that you haven't gotten a chance to say yet?
Oh gosh, like I don't know. Like I actually literally really had to rack my brain for this interview, because you're asking me all sorts of like metaphysical, like philosophical questions that I like wasn't expecting in the context of being a drag queen, but like I tried my best to answer them anyways.
I thought you did a good job.
Thank you. I guess like overall for me, what's most important about drag is that like it's about like subverting notions of like binary gender roles and heteronormativity and stuff like that, that can lead to, I guess, like, you know, problems in society and stuff like that. It's about kind of saying that I'm against that, and I don't want to be like a part of that and all that.
I do have a question about that, because this is something that I think a lot of people probably wonder about. which is that when tearing down constructs, or tearing down, let's say, some things that maybe are perceived as toxic by certain groups of people.
Right.
Now, let's say, as a hypothetical, that there is some person out there, let's call him Biff, just because the guy's name is going to be Biff or Beef or like Mutt or something like that, and he really owns his, like caveman Biff, kind of thing, but also recognizes to approach life in a way where it isn't creating, let's say, for lack of a better word, it's not stepping on other people's toes. Do you think that kind of thing, how is that, how do you view that?
So on the concept of like toxic masculinity, I don't view it in the perspective of like political correctness or not being like offensive, because it's not about not offending people. Like, Biff could be casually misogynistic or casually sexist, but that's still sexism and that's still misogyny, like I find too often nowadays, a lot of corporations and companies, including, I actually literally just talked about this on my Instagram story, but like including the social media platforms that I'm on and that I'm using, market this image of projected masculinity to young men. And I think they implant this idea in young men's minds that in order to be masculine, in order to be manly, you have to project this image of yourself as being masculine. And that includes casual misogyny. That includes casual sexism. That includes a casual homophobia and casual transphobia and trans misogyny as well. Like, I tried getting into Joe Rogan's podcasts and stuff, but then he talked about trans women playing sports, which I thought was bullshit. He like idolized Jordan Peterson, which I thought was bullshit. He like is friends with Logan Paul, which I think is bullshit, because I've seen Logan Paul's prank videos, and that guy is the most fucking arrogant, douchiest, fucking preppy frat boy who I've ever seen in the fucking world. So, like, I just think that too often now, a lot of like marketing, and just to a broader extent, philosophically, commercialism, consumerism, materialism, shallow, fake materialism is marketing this projected image of masculinity to young men. And too often young men are copying that. And young men need to know not to copy that. It's not the image that they should project of themselves. They should project an image that's better. You know what I mean?
Well, I think there's at least a number of things that I agree with you about. One of which is that the corporations, many corporations project images to people in many, many ways that
They market
are essentially
masculinity.
meant to subvert. They have their own subversionary tactics and their own techniques. This isn't an inherently political podcast, but I do agree with you about that. Although I would definitely, string that out to have somewhat more broad interpretations, which I'm sure you would too. But then another thing that I thought was very on point is that people often are led to believe that they should behave in certain ways. And my own take on that is perhaps a little bit radical, because as I said, I'm a nihilist, and I'm very happy being a nihilist, and I'm very happy being dispersionary. So
you see, I'm an optimist. But sorry, continue.
I totally don't mind being dispersed, and I'm happy and optimistic. It's just that I don't believe that there's any inherent meaning to anything, and so as a nihilist, it's very easy to live happily and many different situations. But I do agree with you about a lot of those things. I want to still, you know, within the realm of hobbies and drag and optimism, I think that you look really cool. I've
you.
seen a ton of pictures of you on your Insta that are awesome and dressed up in all kinds of different ways with different makeup.
Why,
And
thank you.
once COVID is over, if you do a show, then let me know. And if it's in Hamilton, I'll come down to Hamilton. And if you can make it to Toronto here, I will come and see
Oh
it.
yeah. Maybe like cruising tangos or something. If holla at me, guys. I've been like sliding into your DMs trying to book a show. That was for cruising tangos. But yeah, like if there's any bar like years next year or whatever that would be willing to have me perform, I would absolutely be down. Like I would be privy to it. You know.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Well, you know, I think you've done a really great job of representing yourself, and also I feel much more educated about drag, and I
Thank
think
you.
that also our viewers will feel more educated about drag. So
Yeah.
that's
Thank you so much.
awesome. Thank you, Irma.
Thank you so much.
So,
I wish I had nails on.
well, you know, you can't do your nails every day.
Yeah.
So I am going to ask you to please stay on the Zoom for a sec. I'm just going to shut it down, and then
Okay.
I'm going to do my outro now. Thank you very much for watching Hobbies with Robbie. We have all learned a lot today from Irma Vepp, and maybe in the future we can have her back on the show. What do you think, Irma?
Oh, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'll be back for seconds.
Awesome. All right, I'm
Okay.
going to turn it off now. Just a sec.
Bye.